Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here. Don't forget to subscribe. But it is Sunday, so we are doing breaches of the week, and boy do we have a lot, including what some are saying is the largest breach in American history, and we will dive into that. But first, thank you so much to Stephen Mullen, Bill Brown, Rakesh Patel, and Bob Scorp for sending me a lot of this information. And with that, let's start right out of the gate with our normal mini segment simply entitled, if you had just spent money on cybersecurity, you wouldn't be getting sued and you wouldn't be having your reputation ruined, because there were a good chunk of lawsuits, etc. this past week. And first one up is the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. Now, basically, the CDCR, as they're called, has agreed to settle a class action lawsuit that alleged negligence for failing to prevent a data breach in 2022. This happened in January of 2022 when attackers breached their systems that contained personally identifiable information and protected health information of individuals incarcerated in the state of California. The deadline for submitting those claims is February 14th of this year. Final approval is March 7th. So if you've ever been in lockdown in California, go get paid. Moving on. Let's head to the other side of the country and talk about RI Bridges. This is the Rhode Island Bridges system. I've talked about this for like the last month or so. As more information has come out, it's a big one, but recently, in the last couple of days, Rhode Island Governor Dan McKee announced that Deloitte, one of the big four accounting firms, has agreed to pay $5 million to the state of Rhode Island to cover expenses incurred during the December 2024 ransomware attack. The attack basically caused a prolonged outage to the RI Bridges system, which is used to manage eligibility for public benefits, including programs such as Medicaid, SNAP, Health Source RI, and RI Works. So heads up to you. In Rhode Island, basically they are getting compensated, and hopefully you'll get some compensation too. Moving on, let's talk about Circle K, the convenience store chain, specifically Gas Express, the largest franchisee of Circle K convenience stores across the United States, and they just got hit with a class action lawsuit over a data breach that impacted an undisclosed number of employees, according to documents filed this past week in the U.S. District of Court for the Northern District of Georgia. I literally just talked about this one, I want to say last week, and again, we are turning around lawsuits super fast these days when it comes to data breaches. And moving on, so good luck to you, Circle K employees of Gas Express. Moving on, let's talk about the United Food and Commercial Workers Union, or UFCW, Local 135. Literally just talked about them last week as well. Never a fan when labor unions are hit, but attorneys for the union workers say that UFCW leaders were aware of the breach in August of 2024 after third-party outlets reported on the breach, which was allegedly carried out by the ransomware collective known as Cicada 3301. Now, despite the release of online reports in 2024, the class action lawsuits allege that UFCW did nothing to warn their members that their information had been basically put out into the world according to the lawsuit, and they didn't send notifications until January 28th of this year. So it's about 5-ish months later, and it's never a good look. I'm never a fan when labor unions are hit. I hope they get back on their feet, et cetera, but this is also why I preach transparency. The faster you let people know, the better they can take precautions, but the net effect of that also is the more mitigation of potential lawsuits that you have, because you're doing your due diligence and you're protecting your people. So again, never a fan of that, but heads up to you, UFCW Local 135 workers. And with that, that was our mini segment. If all of them had just spent money on cybersecurity, they wouldn't be getting breached, and I wouldn't be reporting on them, and they definitely wouldn't be losing money and reputation. Moving on, let's talk about several umbrella companies under the Tokyo Marine HHC umbrella. Now, on January 31st, American Contractors Indemnity Company, Texas Bonding Company, United States Surety Company, and U.S. Specialty Surety Company, aka Tokyo Marine, collectively filed with Massachusetts after discovering an unauthorized party access its website and obtain certain files. Sensitive information, including names and social security, was hit, and Tokyo Marine et al. Are sending out notices to those impacted. Moving on, Bankers Cooperative Inc., Bankers Cooperative Group Inc., or BCG, on January 14, they filed with Health and Human Services after an unauthorized access to an employee email account occurred, and essentially sensitive information belonging to employees of 221 different companies was impacted in here. And completing the investigation, BCG is sending out notifications, but I think by virtue of that, I'm probably going to have at least 221 data breaches I'll be reporting on in the next couple of weeks. That's always fun for me, but here we are. Moving on. Hospital Sisters Health System, or HSHS, in Springfield, Illinois, and also Previa Health in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Both were impacted by a cyber attack in late August, which caused an outage on August 27 of 2023, so more than a year and a half ago, and that impacted computer systems, phones, and websites. They've now collectively confirmed that basically a third party accessed their systems and protected health information was accessed. I do not have a list, but you know I'll be talking about them in my mini segment in the next couple of weeks. Moving on, or all of these for the record. I mean, that's just how this works these days. Anyway, Intercon Construction on January 30th, they filed with Maine after discovering an unauthorized party gained access to parts of their network. Intercon explained sensitive information from consumers was hit, including names and social security numbers, and Intercon Construction is sending out letters to the over 6,000 that were impacted. Moving on, Yazoo Valley Electric Power Association out of Mississippi. They initially warned customers through social media on August 26th that due to software problems, they were unable to process payments. The system was restored 4 days later on August 30th of last year, and in their breach notification letter filed with regulators last week, they basically confirmed that they had discovered quote-unquote suspicious activity on August 26th and started an investigation. That's what I know right now, but heads up if you're in Mississippi and use Yazoo Valley Electric for all your electric needs. Moving on. Kraft CPAs, and that's Kraft with a K, like the massive conglomerate. Don't know if they're related though. Kraft CPAs filed with Massachusetts after discovering files basically were accessed on their network by an unauthorized third party, and we're talking names, social security numbers, driver's license numbers, and they are Kraft CPAs sending out notices as well. Moving on. O'Connor Corporation on January 31st, they filed with Maine as well after saying that their network had a disruption due to a cyber attack. Sensitive information was potentially hit, including names, social security numbers, and financial account information. Basically, they completed their investigation, and O'Connor is sending out notifications as well. And if anybody can, O'Connor can. For all you Chicagoans out there, you should know that. Moving on. Delta County Memorial Hospital on January 31. They filed with Maine as well, and in this notice, Delta Health explained an unauthorized party gained access to sensitive information. We're talking names, address, telephone numbers, dates of birth, social security, driver's license, medical info, health insurance info, and financial account information as well. Delta Health is sending out notices. Also, an estimated 148,363 people impacted by that breach. Moving on, I want to give you an update on HPE, or Hewlett Packard Enterprise, because they are notifying employees now whose data was stolen from the company's Office 365 email environment by a Russian state-sponsored hacker or hackers in May of 2023. It's taking you a while, guys. Now, according to the filings with basically the attorney generals of New Hampshire and Massachusetts, HPE stated that they are now sending out breach notification letters to at least 16 people who had their driver's license, credit card numbers, and social security numbers stolen. Given how big HPE is, if it's limited literally to 16 employees, that's actually pretty good. It sucks for those 16, don't get me wrong, but my God, it could have been tens of thousands. So here we are. We'll see how this unfolds, but they are taking their sweet time with that one. Moving on, Lucent Health on January 30th, they filed with California after basically discovering they were a victim of a phishing attack. Lucent Health explained that sensitive information was hit, including names, social security numbers, dates of birth, health insurance, dental insurance, and or vision insurance policy information. Lucent Health is sending out notices as well. University Diagnostic Medical Imaging, or UDMI, out of New York State, said that threat actors accessed certain information around November 26th of last year before being discovered. They have declared with Health and Human Services that 138,080 people were caught up in this breach. I don't know anything else about this, but best of luck if you are using UDMI for all your imaging needs. Moving on, Allegheny Health Network, basically based out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, they basically said, told HHS that 292,773 patients were impacted by an October 2024 data breach by their third-party contractor IntraSystems, who was responsible for hosting certain systems for basically the subsidiaries of AHN, including home medical equipment and home infusion. Basically, this information that was hit is patient information such as names, address, dates of birth, social security, health insurance, treatment information, prescriptive information, and financial account information as well. Allegheny Health Network is obviously sending notices. Moving on, let's talk about the San Francisco Marin Food Bank. And this sucks because who hits a food bank? They're there to basically help people. And I hate this. It's the same like with like labor unions, right? Like this drives me up a wall when nonprofits, food banks, all of this are hit. And I hate to say it, but on April 4th of this year, San Francisco Marin Food Bank filed notice with Maine, interestingly enough, after learning unauthorized access into their system. Now, in the website notice, the food bank explained that the incident resulted in unauthorized party gaining access to sensitive information. We're talking names, social security numbers, driver's license numbers, state ID numbers, passport numbers, financial account information, medical information, and health insurance information as well. San Francisco Marin Food Bank is sending out notices to those individuals, which are 60,180 of them. And that absolutely sucks. And I really, really hope that, as you know, we see lawsuits every week. I talk about them every week. I really hope nobody's going to sue a food bank because, quite frankly, they need all the help they can get as they are helping others. It just sucks all the way around. Not a fan. And with that, let's move to our finalies, and we have two of them for you today. First one is a standard data breach, but given who they are, I wanted to make this one pretty much one of the flagship ones I'm going to talk about, and that is GrubHub, because GrubHub is super popular as an online delivery platform, and they just announced a data breach this past Monday after a threat actor gained unauthorized access to some of the customer contact information. Now, the company said in a press release that, quote, unusual activity within our environment traced to a third-party service provider for our support team. End quote. So that resulted in a probe by forensics, and here we are. And according to GrubHub, not GitHub, GrubHub, those impacted were campus diners, meaning college students, merchants, and drivers who had communicated with their customer care service, and the following data was accessed: names, address, email address, phone numbers, partial card, credit card details such as type of card, is it a Discover, Amex, Visa, whatever, and basically the last four digits for a subset of campus diners. So, quote, the unauthorized party also accessed hashed passwords for certain legacy systems, and we proactively rotate any passwords that we believed might have been at risk. Now, the company is also saying that GrubHub Marketplace, meaning the app itself, was not impacted, and noted that sensitive information, including social security, driver's license numbers, full payment card information, and merchant logins were not accessed, but GrubHub is recommending you change your password just to make sure, and you should be having unique passwords for absolutely everything you do. But heads up, that is probably going to be much larger. I know, because millions of people use GrubHub, and so by virtue of that, we're probably going to see more, especially on this third party, and so I'll keep you up to date, but that's a big one. But finally, I want to talk about the, quote, largest data breach in American history, end quote. And what we are talking about here is DOGE. That is the Department of Government Efficiency. You might have heard of them. It is being run by Elon Musk on behalf of President Trump, et cetera, et cetera. And FYI, I actually did a segment just on them and the Department of Treasury around February 3rd. But I wanted to talk about some recent actions here and also add in what I said back on that February 3rd-ish segment, which seems like a million years ago at this point, right? And as always, this isn't political. You've probably heard me say this a million times if you're a longtime listener or follower of mine, that cybersecurity is agnostic to politics, but we're not immune from it. And so I want to stick to the facts, and I don't care if this was happening on a Democrat's watch or a Republican's watch. This would be the same video or slash segment slash podcast slash radio show, like all this kind of stuff. So with that, let's get to what Connecticut's Attorney General said. Essentially, that DOGE's actions, quote, represent the largest data breach in American history. Now, Attorney General William Tong announced that Connecticut, his state, is joining several states in filing a lawsuit against the Trump administration. 19 Democratic attorneys generals sued President Trump to stop Elon Musk's Doge, Department of Government Efficiency, from accessing the Treasury Department records. And essentially, those contain sensitive personal information on pretty much all of us: social security numbers, bank account numbers, all that kind of thing. Again, I did a segment on this as well. Now, the case that was filed in federal court in New York City alleges that the Trump administration allowed Musk's team access to the Treasury Department's central payment system in violation of federal law. Tong says this, quote, represents the largest data breach in American history. I'm really concerned about what they're going to do with this information. Totally unauthorized tech bros and in there doing whatever the hell they want. Tong also said that he would do everything that they can, basically these 19 states, to basically stop the Department of Government Efficiency from getting this type of access in the future. Now, Tong also went on to say that Musk had access to any information the Treasury Department has about people and states, and authorities, quote, need to see what has happened to the information they've Doge already gathered. So the Attorney General also said he's concerned that Doge could misuse the information in the system. I don't believe there's any evidence of that thus far, but again, it's always a concern when somebody has access to information. In filing a lawsuit, Tong also said his goal is to remove Musk from his position and the Doge, the department, just as a whole. So that's the news that has come out basically since February 3rd. And on top of that, a judge in federal court has now ordered Doge out of the systems and essentially revoked access. But here's the thing. We'll see what SCOTUS, the Supreme Court, says about all of this, because all of this eventually gets escalated to the Supreme Court. But there are two things here that essentially I want to talk about. So first things first, they've already had access into the system. And so by virtue of that, just as a cybersecurity professional, this means they could have copied out data, they could have set up remote access or different types of backdoors, and if they choose to ignore the judge, they could just simply get back in, and they could get back in surreptitiously. Now, the second point here is that, is this actually a data breach? They're alleging that it is, but I want to be fair, and I want to basically talk about what I understand of the law, and that was a lot of the core discussion points that I had in my original segment. You should go watch or listen to that segment on this, because I mentioned a few different things, and I'm going to give you the briefings here, but the detail is over there. So first things first, vetting and due diligence has to be performed and validated on anybody via background checks for essentially a certification of the person before they can access sensitive or controlled information for the government, whether it's classified or not. There has to be some kind of background check. And by all accounts, President Trump actually hasn't done that. He hasn't done that for any of these people. Now, if you didn't know, President Trump issued a memorandum on January 20th, the day he was inaugurated, entitled, quote, Memorandum to Resolve the Backlog of Security Clearances for Executive Office of the President Personnel, end quote. Basically exempting a lot of these people. I went into detail in my previous segment that I'm not doing here. I urge you to go watch and listen to that to really get up to speed on this. But to be clear, the president has the ability to classify or declassify anything they want, and thus the authority to allow access to whatever information they want. In other words, if he is saying that, yes, I am giving these people access to this and we can declassify it, then that's not necessarily a data breach, that's a presidential order, right? So what is unknown at this time is, one, is Elon Musk on that exemption list from that executive order, or does he have existing clearances at this level? So, for example, contracts with SpaceX don't count. That's corporate validation. That's not an individual validation. And also the people that he is bringing in, we're learning that they're recent high school grads in their early 20s, et cetera, et cetera. Some of them have worked for hacking collectives, criminal hacking collectives, all this kind of stuff. So are these people on that list? Do they have previous clearances? Have they been vetted in any way, shape, or form? That's something to be understood. Now, again, a president can classify and declassify anything they want. And so by presidential order, it is very possible that Musk and his cohort have a legal shield as a result of it, and therefore it is not actually a data breach. These are things that I think we're going to have to resolve in the court system. And anyone working on public systems should, for the record, be known to the government, as there are transparency laws to prevent fraud of this type. In the same way, signed under the George W. Bush administration, there are literally transparency websites that you can go to, put up by the government, to show you where the spending is. That nothing is new that essentially has come out of how these departments are spending this kind of money, because it's literally published information. So the next point I want to make is this obviously then opens up the question, why do they actually want access to the payment system itself? Is it purely to review expenditures, or can they actually start paying themselves and others directly if, let's say, they were going to commit a crime? Now, there have been, since I did that segment also, multiple reports coming out where Doge was initially claiming that, well, we just have read-only admin access so we can review things. There's other reports that they were manipulating code, which means they could inject whatever they wanted into the system, all these kinds of things. And so right now, we don't have that transparency that is essentially required, because we've got literally whistleblowers on one end and a department saying another, and who are you going to believe? And I'm not adjudicating that for you. Again, my job here is to cut through the facts and basically label speculation as speculation, which I think I've just done. Now, despite its name also, DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, is not an actual federal department. It actually, to become an actual federal department, requires approval of the U.S. Congress, something they don't have. That is literally an entire legal issue that I dove into that previous segment on, that I won't dive into here, about essentially an executive order renaming another department, etc., to kind of get around that rule. And so by virtue of it, I highly recommend you see that. And so go listen to that, watch that, for more information, and I'm going to leave it up to you. Is this the largest data breach in American history? Is this a mountain out of a molehill? Are you fine with Elon Musk and his cohort, ages 19 to 24, getting into what is essentially Americans, like every American's personal information, banking information, et cetera, et cetera? I'll let you decide. By all accounts, I think you could go either way with this and say this is indeed the largest breach in American history. Or if you're on the other side, you could say, well, no, there's he's got the shielding and it's an order from the president, and therefore it's not a breach. It's just doing business. I'll leave it to you. Those are your breaches of the week. Were you impacted? If you're an American, you were either way. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter on Nick AESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well, not to mention Blue Sky and Mastodon. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please attempt to stay private. Thanks, everybody, and informed.